Peter chapter 4, 7 through 12. Here are instructions. If you can live by this for the next 12 months, you will have lived the most powerful life for God you have ever lived. I promise you. Here is Peter, and he's writing this letter. And here's what Peter said 2,000 years ago. So think about where we are now. Here's how Peter starts our verses today. Verse 7. The end of the world is coming soon. Peter said that, Apostle Peter 2,000 years ago. You think we're a little bit closer now? You think what he's about to say is more relevant now than then? I think so. What did he say? Therefore, everybody say therefore. How many know a therefore is important? It's not like verily, verily. Somebody told me the other day that verily was one of the apostles' wives' names. I said, I don't believe that. I never saw that. It didn't even make sense. Therefore, light for living, here you go, be earnest and disciplined in your prayers. I'm going to talk about your prayer life for a moment. This is one of the great disciplines for this year. How do you approach your prayer life now compared to what this says? Are you earnest and are you disciplined? Earnest means the passion by which you pray. Are you passionate in your prayers? Can you be more passionate? Can you turn up the volume? Can you turn up the intensity? Can you turn the love and worship up? Then discipline means, how often do you do that? Once a month? Once a week? Or have we learned as the Lord taught his disciples to pray when they asked him, Lord, would you teach us how to pray? He said, give me this day my daily bread. It's going to be increasingly important that you pray passionately and that you pray daily. Are you ready? Can you do that? Why couldn't you do this? And why shouldn't we do this? Peter prefaced in saying, the end of the world is soon. I tell you, we're living in last days. Last days of what? The last days of God's mercy and grace before his judgment. That alone should give us the fire and the passion and the discipline that we need to pray daily. Amen? Number 2, look at verse 8. Then Peter says, most important of all. Most important, okay? You think this is first? When he says most important of all, do you think this is top priority with Peter? What does he say is most important of all? That you continue to show deep love for each other. For love covers a multitude of sins. We're not good at this yet. We're getting better. But we need to be a lot better. We're still offended by each other's sins. We still tend to judge one another by what we perceive as each other's sins. This ought not to be. Are you with me? Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that Jesus' disciples lived sinless lives? Has anyone ever lived a sinless life other than Jesus? So can we admit we are not going to live sinless lives? Can we admit that? Can we have an honest enough, transparent, authentic enough life to say, I'm not as good at this as I ought to be? I fail. See, we still are saved by grace, aren't we? So what God puts grace on, we dare not put our judgment on. Does that make sense? We ought not to judge what God covers with grace. Peter said this is the most important discipline for living in the last days, is how you love each other and cover your brother and your sister's sin. Well, Pastor Randy, I guess you're going to go down the road of compromise, aren't you? No, but you are. If you're judging, you're a compromiser. You're the compromiser, not me. I'm not sure why this happened, but after the flood was over and Noah's family exited the ark, Noah got drunker than $700. I mean, he took it to the house. So much so that he lost his clothing. Laid out naked for everybody to see. Some of his family made fun of him, but two of his sons took a coat, and the Bible said they walked backwards to him in his condition. Didn't look on him. They covered him in his nakedness without looking. Does that say anything to you about how we should love one another when we are having our worst day? Can you take a coat and walk backwards? I don't want to see. I don't want to know details. I want to cover you. You're having a tough day, man. I've been there. Not better than you. Let me cover you. Let me not judge you, because with the same measure that I judge, I have now learned that I shall myself receive that same amount of judgment. See, I'm telling you, we can do better. Do you see how you can do better? If y'all found me inebriated and unclothed on the side of the road, what would be your actions? There's my pastor. There's Noah. Drunk, naked, and out of his mind. The remnant church will cover their brother and their sister when they fall. I don't know whether Noah did that deliberately or had an accident. Probably to get that far down the road, he probably made his mind up for some. Maybe if you live on an ark for a year, that makes you go crazy. I don't know. I'm just saying. That's what happened. But people that had the heart of God covered. That's why God put Jesus on that cross and let him hang there naked to cover our sin, that he wouldn't have to look at it. And now he has given unto us the ministry of reconciliation. I think some people misread that and said he has given to us the ministry of investigation. That's the way denominational, institutional people live. Well, now we need to get a committee together and call this brother, this sister in, and we need to examine. Well, maybe you ought to call a prayer meeting first for yourself and get the heart of the Father and get filled with the Spirit of God, because God is love and love covers. Now watch this. Here's a big word that's we're going to choke on. Multitude. Not just drunkenness. Look, we're growing up, aren't we? Aren't you excited that you're the freedom to walk in love without judging anybody else? And it doesn't matter the multitude. We live in relationships where we're like, that was one. About a week later, that was number 2. I'm packing. 3 strikes, you're out. My precious dad was an evangelist at heart, and he came out of the old way. And one of the last days before I could not see him anymore last year, since March, I still haven't seen him. He said, "Son, I got me a new message." I said, "Oh, what is it?" He said, "It's called 3 strikes and you're out." I said, "Okay, Dad." That's not God's way. We are here as ministers of reconciliation. So, look, we're going to spend the rest of our life reconciling people to God. So does it really matter how many problems they have? Does it really matter how many sins they have committed? When we know that we are to forgive 70 times 7 in one day, somebody's doing a lot of screw-ups if I got to deal with you 490 times in one day. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm serious. Most important of all, verse 8, continue to show deep love for each other, for love covers a multitude of sin. Now look, if I hear of people judging one another, I'm going to have a conversation with you, and I'm going to have you read this verse to me out loud, okay? We're going to stay accountable. We're going to be accountable. Why? Because I'm probably going to need your mercy and your love. And if I have shown it, I can reap it.